cold precision. The cardiac wing of Metropolitan Hospital gleamed with antiseptic brilliance under fluorescent lights. Everything ran with clockwork precision. Nurses moved efficiently between stations, monitors beeped in predictable patterns. And at the center of this medical orchestra stood Dr. Ethan Reynolds, ensuring not a single beat was out of place. "The patient in 307 is showing arrhythmia again," Dr. Reynolds stated flatly, eyes fixed on the chart rather than the resident who had brought the news. "Increase amiodarone to 300 milliliters and schedule another ECG for tomorrow morning." No one questioned his judgment. With 3 published books on innovative cardiac procedures and a wall of accolades, Ethan had earned his position as the youngest chief of cardiology in the hospital's history. But the respect he commanded came bundled with fear. His gaze could drop the temperature of a room by 10 degrees. "Yes, doctor," the resident replied, scurrying away as Ethan continued his rounds, tablet in hand, examining vitals and test results with mechanical efficiency. 8 years had passed since the car accident that took his wife Josephine and their unborn child. 8 years since he'd sworn that if he couldn't save the hearts that mattered most to him, he would save every other heart that came his way. Emotion had no place in medicine. It clouded judgment, created attachment, led to devastating loss. Better to keep a professional distance. Better to see patients as complex biological puzzles rather than people. The hospital administration tolerated his cold demeanor because his surgical success rate was unmatched. Patients recovered under his knife even when other doctors had declared their cases hopeless. What did bedside manner matter when you could give someone decades of additional life? The afternoon brought a staff meeting introducing new personnel. Ethan barely glanced up from his notes until a soft voice with a gentle British Indian accent broke his concentration. "I'm looking forward to bringing my experience from London's Royal Cardiology Centre to Metropolitan. I believe in treating not just the heart condition, but the person living with it." Sophia Patel stood at the front of the room, her dark hair twisted into a practical bun, warm brown eyes scanning the faces of her new colleagues. Unlike the nervous energy most new staff exhibited, she carried herself with quiet confidence. Ethan's pen paused mid-note. "Ms. Patel, while your sentiment is admirable, at Metropolitan we focus on medical outcomes rather than emotional comfort. The latter is a luxury that often compromises the former." A ripple of uncomfortable silence spread across the room. No one challenged Dr. Reynolds, especially not on their first day. But Sophia smiled, not the intimidated smile of someone retreating, but the assured smile of someone who had heard such arguments before and remained unmoved by them. "With respect, Dr. Reynolds, my research at Oxford demonstrated that patient emotional well-being correlates with a 23% improvement in recovery time from cardiac procedures. I'd be happy to share my published findings with you." Their eyes locked across the conference room, his cool blue against her warm brown, in the first of what would become many silent battles of philosophy. Later that week, Ethan found Sophia sitting beside elderly Mr. Thornton's bed, helping him FaceTime with his grandchildren before his triple bypass surgery. "Ms. Patel, there are 3 patients waiting for their pre-surgical consultations," Ethan said sharply. Sophia nodded but didn't rush. "Just 1 minute, Dr. Reynolds. Mr. Thornton's family is singing him his favorite song for good luck." The sound of off-key but heartfelt singing filled the room as Mr. Thornton's weathered face lit up with joy. "Time spent calming pre-surgical anxiety is hardly wasted, doctor," she added quietly. "I'll be with the other patients momentarily." As Ethan walked away, he found himself inexplicably unsettled. Efficiency had always been his North Star, his guiding principle. But the look of peace on Mr. Thornton's face lingered in his mind, raising an uncomfortable question he thought he'd buried years ago. Was he truly healing his patients, or merely fixing them? Disruptions. 3 weeks into Sophia's tenure at Metropolitan, the cardiac floor had undergone subtle but unmistakable changes. Patients' rooms now featured photographs from home, handwritten notes from loved ones taped beside monitors. The nurses, station once a model of sterile efficiency, occasionally erupted with quiet laughter. Even the typically somber daily rounds had been infiltrated by Sophia's gentle questions about patients' families, hobbies, and fears. Dr. Ethan Reynolds observed these disruptions with growing irritation. During morning rounds, he watched as Sophia knelt beside the bed of Jessica Warner, a 38-year-old awaiting a valve replacement. "I brought you that playlist we talked about yesterday," Sophia said, placing wireless earbuds on Jessica's bedside table. "The studies show that familiar music can reduce preoperative anxiety by nearly 30%. "Ms. Patel," Ethan interrupted, "a word outside, please." In the hallway, fluorescent lights highlighted the contrast between them. Ethan's precisely knotted tie and immaculate lab coat against Sophia's practical scrubs adorned with a small, colorful pin shaped like a heart. "Creating personalized playlists isn't in your job description," he said, keeping his voice low. "You're here to monitor vitals and administer medication." Sophia didn't flinch. "Jessica's blood pressure drops an average of 12 points when she listens to music." "That's not sentiment, Dr. Reynolds. That's measurable data." "And the family photos? The handwritten schedules with smiley faces? Are those measurable data too?" "Actually, yes." Sophia handed him her tablet. "I've been tracking patient recovery metrics since implementing these small changes. Reduced requests for pain medication, improved sleep patterns, faster mobilization post-surgery." Ethan scanned the spreadsheet, his frown deepening, not because the data was flawed, but because it wasn't. The numbers told a story he didn't want to read. "Just maintain professional boundaries," he said finally, returning the tablet. "This isn't a boutique care facility." Later that afternoon, the emergency alert system blared through the cardiac floor. A code blue in room 412, Mr. Thornton's room. Ethan arrived first, finding the elderly man in full cardiac arrest 3 days after his seemingly successful bypass. The resuscitation team worked with practiced coordination. Ethan barking orders, nurses responding instantly, the defibrillator charged and ready. "Still in V-fib," called a resident after the first shock. "No pulse." Again, Ethan commanded, his mind calculating medications, timing, probabilities. This was where he thrived, in the clinical realm where emotion had no place, where only expertise and precision mattered. 3 shocks later, with no response, Ethan prepared to call time of death when Sophia pushed forward. "Dr. Reynolds, let me try something." Without waiting for permission, she leaned close to Mr. Thornton's ear and spoke in a voice meant only for him. "Your granddaughter Emily's recital is next week, remember? You promised to be there." Ethan nearly pulled her away. This wasn't protocol. This wasn't medicine, but something stopped him. "One more round of epinephrine," he ordered instead. "And another shock." The monitor beeped, then showed a sudden rhythm. Irregular at first, then stabilizing. Mr. Thornton had returned. Hours later, after ensuring the patient's stability, Ethan found Sophia in the quiet staff room, her usually perfect bun slightly undone, eyes closed as she leaned against the wall. "What you did today wasn't in any medical textbook," he said, pouring 2 cups of coffee and offering her one. Sophia accepted the cup with a tired smile. "Sometimes we need to remember that we're treating people, not just hearts." "You reminded him of something worth coming back for," Ethan acknowledged reluctantly. "Everyone has something, Dr. Reynolds, even you." The statement hung between them, uncomfortably perceptive. For the first time in years, Ethan felt seen, not as the brilliant surgeon with the flawless record, but as someone who might also need something worth returning to. "The surgical board for tomorrow," he said, changing the subject. "I want you assisting on the Henderson case." Sophia's eyebrows rose in surprise. The Henderson case was complex, a challenging procedure Ethan normally reserved for senior staff. "You've earned it," he added simply, leaving before she could respond. That night, Driving home to his immaculate but empty penthouse, Ethan caught himself wondering what Sophia's home looked like. Was it warm and personal like the patient rooms she'd transformed? Did she have family photographs and colorful pillows, maybe plants or pets? The thought startled him. He hadn't wondered about another person's life, their actual life, not just their medical history, in years. It was a disruption to his carefully ordered existence, and for the first time since losing Josephine, he wasn't immediately sure that disruptions were something to be avoided at all costs. Unexpected thaw. The Henderson surgery stretched past its 8th hour, tension thick in operating room 3. What had begun as a standard valve replacement had revealed previously undetected complications. Calcification extending further than imaging had shown, tissue more fragile than anticipated. Every surgeon eventually faced cases that tested the limits of skill and stamina. This was quickly becoming one of Ethan's. "Suction here," he instructed, his voice steady despite the mounting pressure. "More light." Across the table, Sophia maintained perfect composure, anticipating his needs with an intuition that surprised him. When he extended his hand, the precise instrument he needed materialized in it before he could name it. When bleeding obscured his field of vision, she cleared it with expert efficiency. 3 hours later, as they finally closed, Ethan knew the truth. Without Sophia's assistance, the outcome might have been dramatically different. "Good work in there," he said as they scrubbed out, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. Compliments weren't part of his regular vocabulary. Sophia's tired eyes crinkled at the corners. "We make a surprisingly good team, Dr. Reynolds." "Ethan," he corrected, surprising himself. "After 12 hours in surgery together, I think we can drop formalities." The afternoon sunlight slanted through windows in the recovery lounge as they monitored Henderson's post-operative vitals. Ethan found himself studying Sophia's profile, the determined set of her jaw, the gentle way she adjusted the patient's blanket, the streak of fatigue shadowing her eyes. "You should get some rest," he said. "I can monitor things here." "I'm fine," she insisted, stifling a yawn. "Besides, the first 6 hours post-op are critical." "I am aware of basic cardiac protocol," he remarked dryly. To his surprise, Sophia laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to brighten the sterile room. "Yes, I suppose you wrote half the protocols we use." The easy moment between them felt like stepping onto unfamiliar ground. Ethan retreated to the comfort of clinical discussion. "Your technique during the arterial graft was impressive. Where did you train for that approach?" "Delhi first, then London," she replied, checking Henderson's drainage output. "But that particular modification I developed while volunteering in a clinic in Tanzania. Limited resources require creative solutions." "Tanzania?" The image didn't fit his mental profile of her. Prestigious hospitals, academic research, yes. Remote clinics, no. 2 years with Doctors Without Borders before Metropolitan. She glanced up, catching his surprised expression. "Not what you expected?" "I don't make a habit of forming personal expectations about colleagues." "Don't you?" Her tone was light, but knowing. "I think you form expectations about everyone, Ethan. It's safer that way, isn't it? When people remain exactly where you've placed them in your mind, they can't surprise you. They can't—" She hesitated. "They can't what?" he prompted, unexpectedly, invested in her analysis. "They can't matter," she finished simply. The words landed with uncomfortable precision. For years, he'd maintained careful distance. From colleagues, from patients, from anything that threatened the control he'd built since Josephine's death. He'd convinced himself it was professionalism, not fear. Henderson's monitors beeped, breaking the moment. Both moved to check the readings, their hands briefly overlapping on the chart. Ethan withdrew first, suddenly conscious of how rarely he experienced human touch outside of surgical gloves. Later that evening, passing the hospital chapel, Ethan spotted Sophia sitting alone in the dim light. Something made him pause instead of continuing to the parking garage. "Everything all right?" he asked from the doorway. She nodded. "Just my tradition after difficult cases." A moment of quiet. He hesitated, then entered the space he typically hurried past. "Religious?" "Grateful," she corrected, "for the privilege of helping people at their most vulnerable, for the incredible complexity of the human heart, both the organ and the metaphorical one." Ethan sat beside her, the wooden pew creaking softly. "My wife used to say something similar. Josephine was a pediatric oncologist. She found beauty, even in the hardest cases." The name slipped out before he could catch it. Josephine, who hadn't been mentioned aloud in conversation for years. Sophia remained quiet, neither pushing for more nor withdrawing from the unexpected revelation. "The accident was 8 years ago," he continued, words emerging from some long-sealed place. "Drunk driver. She was 5 months pregnant." "I'm sorry," Sophia said simply. "After losing them, medicine became clearer somehow. Remove emotion, focus on the physical problem, fix what can be fixed." "And yourself? Who fixes what's broken there?" The chapel's silence absorbed his lack of response. Outside, the hospital continued its endless rhythm of life, death, and the struggles in between. "Henderson's going to make it," Ethan said finally, standing. "Thanks to good medicine. And to being reminded what he's fighting for," Sophia added gently. "His daughter showed me pictures of his fishing cabin. He's planning to teach his grandchildren to fish this summer." Ethan nodded, suddenly picturing the fishing trips he'd planned for the child he never got to meet. "Get some rest, Sophia. Tomorrow we'll be busy." As he walked to his car, the evening air felt different somehow, heavier with possibility, lighter with something he couldn't name. For the first time in 8 years, he drove home taking the long route past the lake, where he and Josephine used to walk on Sundays, allowing himself to remember not just how it ended, but how it had been to truly live. Professional boundaries. The quarterly hospital board meeting droned on as administrators discussed budget allocations, equipment purchases, and departmental metrics. Ethan normally contributed precise, data-driven insights during these sessions, but today his attention repeatedly drifted to the other side of the conference table where Sophia sat, taking notes and occasionally offering thoughtful questions about patient experience improvements. "Dr. Reynolds?" The hospital director's voice pulled him back. "Your thoughts on the proposal?" Ethan straightened, quickly scanning the slide projected on the wall, something about implementing a new patient follow-up protocol. "I believe the cardiology department would benefit from this approach," he said, surprising himself and everyone else in the room. "Ms. Patel's preliminary data on patient engagement suggests improved compliance with post-discharge instructions when emotional well-being is addressed alongside physical recovery." Sophia's pen paused mid-stroke, her eyes meeting his with undisguised surprise. After the meeting, she caught up with him in the corridor. "Did I hallucinate? Or did the great Dr. Reynolds just publicly endorse the value of emotional support in cardiac care?" "I endorsed evidence-based improvements to patient outcomes," he corrected, but without his usual defensive edge. "The data you've collected is compelling." "Well, I appreciate the vote of confidence," she said, falling into step beside him. "I wasn't sure you'd even noticed my research." "I notice more than people think," he replied, then added more quietly, "including that you've been working through your lunch breaks for 2 weeks straight." Sophia smiled. "Monitoring the Wiseman transplant case. His body was showing early signs of rejection, but I think we've stabilized him now." "That doesn't explain why you're missing meals," says the man whose diet consists primarily of vending, machine granola bars, and hospital coffee. They reached the elevator, both reaching for the button simultaneously. Again, that momentary contact, small but electric. Again, that mutual withdrawal, too deliberate to be casual. "Have dinner with me," Ethan said suddenly. The words surprised him as much as they clearly surprised her. "Dinner?" Sophia repeated, her professional composure briefly slipping. "To discuss your research," he clarified quickly, "and potential implementations across departments." "Of course." She nodded, composure restored. "For the research." That evening at Riverview, an upscale restaurant overlooking the city waterfront, their conversation flowed with unexpected ease. The professional pretense gradually gave way to genuine exchange about medical training, travel experiences, books they'd read, even childhood memories. So young Ethan Reynolds wanted to be a Formula One driver before medicine called? Sophia laughed, her expression more relaxed than he'd ever seen at the hospital. "Brief teenage obsession," he admitted. "Much to my father's horror. 3 generations of physicians in the family." "And you never rebelled?" "Medicine wasn't a rebellion for me. It was a calling." He twirled the stem of his wine glass. "Even as a child, I was fascinated by the heart. This incredible machine that never stops working, never takes a break, determines everything about our existence." "And yet it's not just a machine," Sophia observed. "It responds to emotion, to connection. It physically changes with grief, with joy." "Takotsubo cardiomyopathy," Ethan nodded. "Broken heart syndrome." "Exactly. The body knowing what the mind sometimes denies. That emotional pain is physical too." Their eyes held across the table, the conversation suddenly in territory far from professional collaboration. The moment broke when Ethan's phone buzzed urgently. The hospital emergency line. His face transformed as he listened to the voice on the other end. "Major multi-vehicle accident," he explained, already signaling for the check. "All hands needed." They arrived at the hospital to controlled chaos. Ambulances unloading victims, trauma teams assembling, operating rooms being prepped. The next, 12 hours dissolved into a blur of critical decisions, emergency surgeries, and life-or-death moments. In OR2, Ethan worked frantically to repair the shattered chest of a young woman whose heart had been pierced by a metal fragment. Sophia assisted, their earlier personal connection submerged beneath total professional focus. "She's crashing," a resident called as monitors screamed warnings. "More blood," Ethan ordered, his hands steady despite the pressure. "We're losing her." The fragment had torn through the left ventricle, blood pouring faster than they could replace it. In that critical moment, Ethan felt something he hadn't allowed in years, the desperate personal need for this stranger to survive, to have her chance at life. "Come on," he whispered, abandoning his clinical detachment. "Stay with us." Hours. Later, after 3 surgeries and countless critical interventions, Ethan found Sophia in the doctor's lounge, still in surgical scrubs, stained with evidence of their night. "The young woman from OR2, she asked immediately. "Angela?" "Stable," he confirmed, exhaustion evident in his voice. "Against all odds." They sat in weary silence, the adrenaline of crisis gradually ebbing. "You called her by name in there," Sophia noted quietly. "Not the patient or the trauma case. Angela." Ethan didn't respond immediately, processing the observation. "I suppose I did. Professional boundaries shifting, Dr. Reynolds?" The question hung between them, laden with meaning that extended far beyond the operating room. When he finally met her gaze, Ethan saw his own conflict mirrored in her eyes, the tension between professional ethics and personal feelings, between past wounds and future possibilities. "I'm not sure I know where the boundaries are anymore," he admitted, the confession both frightening and freeing. Sophia's hand moved across the small space between them, coming to rest beside his, not quite touching, but close enough that he could feel its warmth. "Maybe," she suggested gently. "That's not entirely a bad thing." Heartbeats, synchronized spring, arrived at Metropolitan Hospital, sunlight streaming through windows that had only known winter's gray for months. The cardiac wing had undergone subtle transformations. Consultation rooms now featured comfortable seating arrangements instead of imposing desks. Recovery rooms displayed artwork created by former patients, and a small garden had been established on the previously unused terrace where post-operative patients could experience fresh air during recovery. Dr. Ethan Reynolds stood in this garden now, watching as Angela Matthews, the young woman whose life had hung by a thread just 2 months earlier, took careful steps along the stone path, her mother hovering protectively nearby. "Dr. Reynolds," Angela called, waving with her free hand. "Look, 2 laps today." "Impressive progress," he acknowledged, genuinely pleased. "How's the pain level?" 3 on good days, 5 on bad ones, but Dr. Patel says that's normal for now." Sophia had taken particular interest in Angela's case, developing a specialized rehabilitation program that integrated both physical and emotional recovery. The results spoke for themselves. Angela's progress exceeded all standard metrics for patients with comparable injuries. "Dr. Patel knows what she's talking about," Ethan agreed, the words coming easily now. As if summoned by her name, Sophia appeared in the garden doorway, clipboard in hand. Sunlight caught the silver strands that had begun appearing in her dark hair, evidence of the demanding months since the night of the accident. To Ethan, they only enhanced her beauty, adding dimension to someone who had already shown such depth. "Angela, your latest echocardiogram results are excellent," Sophia announced, joining them. "The ventricular function has improved another 7% since last month." The young woman beamed, then glanced between her 2 doctors with knowing eyes. "You two make a good team. I got lucky having both of you that night." After Angela and her mother continued their therapy walk, Ethan and Sophia lingered in the garden, the hospital's constant demands temporarily held at bay. "The board approved the Integrated Cardiac Care Program," Ethan said, breaking their comfortable silence. "Full funding, starting next quarter." Sophia's face lit up. "Really? Even the family support component?" "Especially that part. Your outcomes data was compelling." The program represented months of collaboration between them. Ethan's clinical expertise merged with Sophia's holistic approach, creating a comprehensive care model that addressed both the medical and emotional aspects of cardiac recovery. "I couldn't have done it without your support," she acknowledged. "Not many department heads would have embraced such a fundamental shift in approach." "Not many would have challenged me so persistently," he countered with a rare smile. "You changed this department, Sophia. You changed me." Their relationship had evolved cautiously, professionally, shared coffee in the doctor's lounge, working dinners to discuss cases, occasional walks through the park near the hospital. Colleagues had noticed the transformation in Ethan, the gradual softening of his demeanor, his newfound willingness to listen to others, the way he now addressed patients by name and inquired about their lives beyond their cardiac conditions. "Have you visited the memorial garden?" he asked suddenly. Sophia shook her head. "The one near the children's hospital? I'd like to show you something there if you have time." The small, secluded garden across campus was designed as a place of reflection for families and staff dealing with loss. In its center stood a simple stone fountain surrounded by benches and flowering plants. Ethan led her to a particular rose bush with deep crimson blooms. A small plaque at its base read simply, "Josephine and Emma Reynolds, forever in our hearts." "Emma," Sophia said softly. "That would have been your daughter's name." "Yes." He touched one of the blooms gently. "For 8 years I came here alone on the anniversary of the accident. It was my only acknowledgement of what happened, 15 minutes, once a year. The rest of the time I buried myself in work, in the technical aspects of medicine. A perfectly understandable response to profound grief, Sophia said, her hand finding his. But not a sustainable one, he replied, interlacing their fingers. You helped me see that, not just with patients, but with myself. A light breeze carried the scent of roses around them as Ethan turned to face her fully. I've maintained professional boundaries between us because I respect you too much as a colleague to risk compromising that relationship, he said carefully. But I can't pretend anymore that what I feel for you is merely professional admiration. Sophia's brown eyes held his, unwavering. And I can't pretend that I came to Metropolitan solely for career advancement. Your research drew me here initially, but you, the person beneath the reputation, that's why I stayed. I'm still learning how to balance the heart surgeon with the human being, he admitted. I'll make mistakes. So will I, she smiled. But I believe in evidence-based approaches, and all evidence suggests we're better together than apart. The kiss they shared was gentle, a beginning rather than a culmination, the first heartbeat of something new. 3 days later, the cardiac team gathered for their weekly case review. Staff members noticed immediately that something had changed. Dr. Reynolds entered alongside Dr. Patel. She'd earned her doctorate recognition months earlier, both radiating a quiet contentment that transformed the usually tense meeting into something almost pleasant. Before we begin, Ethan announced, I want to introduce a new initiative Dr. Patel and I will be co-directing. The Integrated Cardiac Healing Program will officially launch next month, combining cutting-edge surgical techniques with comprehensive emotional and psychological support for patients and families. Murmurs of approval spread through the room. This formalization of the approach that had already been transforming their department was welcome news. Medicine is both science and art, Ethan continued, his gaze briefly meeting Sophia's across the room. For too long, I emphasized only the former. But true healing requires both, technical precision and human connection, clinical expertise and compassionate care. As the meeting progressed, the team noticed something unprecedented. Dr. Reynolds laughing at a resident's nervous joke, offering encouragement rather than criticism, demonstrating the very integration of head and heart that the new program embodied. Later, as they walked together toward the cardiac ward for evening rounds, Sophia nudged Ethan gently. You realize the hospital rumor mill is going to be working overtime now. Let them talk, he replied, surprising her by taking her hand openly in the corridor. Some conditions of the heart can't be hidden, nor should they be. In the garden memorial that evening, as sunset painted the sky in shades of promise, 2 roses lay beside Josephine and Emma's plaque, one crimson, one white, their stems gently intertwined. A small note nestled between them read, Moving forward. Doesn't mean forgetting. It means finding the courage to love again. The doctor, who had once lived only for work, had discovered that work itself gained meaning when balanced with love, that healing others and healing oneself were journeys that, when shared, created something greater than either could achieve, alone. Their heartbeats, once operating on separate rhythms, had found synchrony at last.